The theme this month is creativity. And I'm going to be honest with you today because I'm good at that. And I want to begin by saying that I take a different approach to spirituality and to my faith than my friend and mentor, Reverend Deborah Johnson. I've never met anybody as resolute and as steadfast in their faith as Rev D. It doesn't seem to matter what's going on. Rev has a deep and abiding trust that all is working together for good. I don't. I'm just going to keep it real with you. I get nervous. I get really, really nervous. Not just right now, I mean in general. I have a pretty nervous disposition. And I've said before from this pulpit that I'm not sure what God is. And I'm not sure what I think God is. I have a tendency to be unforgiving, to be vengeful, to be frustrated, and generally nervous, which I've mentioned before. And that's just part of who I am. It's not that I'm not working on it. It's not that I don't want it to be different. It's just who I am. And I know that at this point in my life. I'm going to tell you what my biggest Achilles heel is. It's if somebody believes something about me that I know is not true. That drives me insane. More so insane if I know somebody said it knowing it wasn't true. That drives me up the wall. And it makes me crazy. It makes me want to run out and grab that person and tell them how it is, which would not be helpful. But it's this impulse that I have. And it's because I don't like being perceived different than I know myself to be. And really, at the end of the day, that's about control. And if I back up one more step, it's about the feeling that I'm not in control. That I'm not in control of how I'm being perceived. I'm sure some of you have a solution to that, right? You can tell me how to fix that, because I haven't found a way. And I know that control is something that's really, really difficult for me. I think I've spoken before about what I call neurotic tendencies, what other people might call OCD, which is a little problem I have in general in my life. I fold my shirts the same way every time. I put the dishes in the dishwasher the same way every time. I take them out in the exact same order every time. It's a little bit of an OCD problem. And really what that comes down to is a control problem, which is most excellent when we're talking about this particular field in which we have absolutely zero control. And that's really what perception comes down to. It comes down to, do you have the self-awareness to understand and the humility to accept that you are not in control? For me, generally, the answer is no. But I'm working on it. That's my spiritual practice. Inner Light is what we call an Omnifaith ministry, which means we don't have a particular origin or a particular tradition that we pin ourselves back to. We generally fall into the category of like a Centers for Spiritual Living, and we take bits and pieces, not bits and pieces as though we're cutting out the good parts and leaving out the bad parts, but we inform our spirituality through a number of different traditions. And I'm about to go on a wild tangent, but hopefully you'll stick with me. Ernest Holmes is an author that we teach here. If you go through any of the core programs or the practitioner programs or a lot of the classes, you'll bump into a name, Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes is an author, and he's an author that, if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I took a class, but he came up with the idea of the prayer model that we use, which is called affirmative prayer. An affirmative prayer has 5 steps, which I can't remember, so I'm not going to tell you what they are, but there are 5 steps. And the idea is not that you change the circumstance that you're in. It's that you change your mind. You change your perception of that which you are in. When you begin praying, you come out different. The world around you doesn't change. You change your perception of the situation you're in. Are you with me? And you can come at this from a lot of different models. You can look at it from psychology. You could probably look at it scientifically, though I'm not smart enough to do that. You can look at it spiritually. But it all comes back to the same thing. The way that you perceive something determines how you experience that thing. So if you can shift your perception of what it is that's taking place in front of you or what it is that you are experiencing, your experience of it is going to be different. And there's not one thing that's better to pray about than something else. If you throw a coin in a wishing well and you make a wish, that's not a worse prayer than somebody who kneels down and prays 5 times a day. They're both prayers. Because the idea is that you're planting a seed of hope within your mind. And sometimes, when we don't have the depth of understanding to understand that what needs to change is us, sometimes we hope that the situation we're in will change. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you see a lot of different traditions that teach of a benevolent creator or something outside of yourself that is in control and that you must cede your power to. And that thing has the ability to change or direct or design whatever it is that's going on with your life. And I'm not saying good, bad, or otherwise. If that's how you believe, then that's how you believe. That's fine. I already started by saying I'm not sure what God is, so that's not how I perceive it. But you can. You're more than welcome to. But really, what is happening in those situations is that those traditions are trying to get you to step back from a sense of control. The idea of a benevolent creator outside of you who has all power and you have none is really saying, you're not in control. And what needs to happen now is for you to step back. Is for you to step back and trust that life has something in store for you. That yes, things look rough right now, but they won't always be rough. That yes, this thing feels bad, but it won't always feel bad. That yes, things are looking a little bleak right now, but they won't always be looking bleak. And there's some hope, there's some possibility, there's something in the world that cannot be explained, cannot be named, cannot be seen. But something out there has got your back. That's what these traditions are saying. Our tradition isn't really altogether different, is it? But what's saying, sorry, can you, that was me. One of you told to turn your phone off, just slide it to the right. Pause. You're not in control, right? Okay. Our tradition is saying, not that there's a benevolent creator outside of you, although there may very well be, but that you, right inside, that inside as in an inside job, have the ability at any time to shift your perception. We give you a tool to do that. That's affirmative prayer. Any other faith or any other tradition gives you other tools to do that. But they're all getting to the same thing. You have to relinquish your sense of control because it is just that. It is a sense of control. There is no real control. Life happens. There's just no two ways about that. I want to tell you a story about how I ended up here entering the light. You may have heard this before, but in 2008, myself and a couple of friends were the victims of a violent crime. And that morning, I was released from the hospital, and I came here. I was supposed to go home But I refused to go home, and I made the people I was with, I think I was maybe 25 at the time, 24. I know some of you are thinking you thought I was 24 now, but I'm not. And they wanted me to go home, which I should have because I was not well. And I asked them, just please bring me here. Please just bring me here. And I didn't know why, because at the time, I wasn't really deeply entrenched in this community. To be perfectly frank, I sat in the back of the balcony, and I really only came because there were people that I liked that came here. I wasn't even listening to Rev D. I really wasn't. I couldn't have told you anything that she really said. I just knew I had to be here. And so they brought me here, and afterwards somebody prayed with me, and at that time, prayer wasn't a thing. I grew up in a manner that I hopped around to a lot of different, well, I didn't, my dad did, hopped around to a lot of different churches. And he was always convinced that this one was the one, right? And then he became a born-again Christian, and he was convinced that that was the one, which was the most terrifying for me at the time. And so I didn't have any sense of faith. I didn't have any sense of tradition. I didn't have any sense of prayer or of needing to have a religion or a church or anything like that. But I knew I had to come here. And the reason was because I felt safe here. And I didn't have an explanation for why that was. I just knew that I felt safe. I just knew that in this room there were a lot of different kinds of people that looked very different from me and some that looked the same, and that those people could understand me. And that's why we build communities like this one. And it's not because we all share the same tradition. For many of us, it's because we can't find a tradition that we fit in. It's because we feel like misfits. Or it's because for some of us that we've been ostracized or kicked out of different communities. But that search, that deep need, that impulse to understand didn't go away. Because that's part of being human. That desire to understand is part of being human. And in some ways, while it might be the most frustrating thing about being human, is this desire or this need to understand or this need to be in control. At the same time, that's the same thing that leads us to an understanding that we're not and that we can't. And so sometimes those things have to work together. And this is why I'm so passionate about people experiencing pain. Pain, frustration, angst, sadness, upheaval, turmoil. I could keep going, but I think you get the point. Bad feelings. I don't think, again, I don't know, but I don't think we were designed to experience an entire range of emotion that we're just not supposed to experience. To me, that doesn't make sense. It's part of our emotional range because it's necessary. Because sometimes we can't find the humility it takes to get on our knees and relinquish all sense of control, that we might find something deep inside of ourselves that we did not even know that we needed, let alone know that it was there. And that is what faith is. So if you're not asking the question, I will. What does this have to do with creativity? Well, that's a great question. In my experience, there are two things that really lead to a change of perception: pain and creativity. Creativity is it is a spiritual quality. Are you familiar with spiritual qualities? I'm not just pulling this out of the air. You've heard of spiritual qualities before, right? Creativity is a spiritual quality, and it is also a practice. It in and of itself is a spiritual practice. Creativity offers you the opportunity to experience yourself outside of yourself. It gives you an opportunity to make a right turn from analytical thinking, from black and white, from zeros and ones, or whatever other synonym you can think of for that. And it lets you drop into something completely unexplainable. So I'm not going to do it a disservice by standing up here and trying to explain it. But being creative gives you an opportunity to create something new. Creative, right? Creation. It's creating something new. And creativity does not have to be art. In our culture, we perceive creativity as being frivolous, as being something that's extra. As once you clock in, you do your work, you do what you're supposed to do, and at 5 o'clock when you punch out, maybe you can be creative. Once you're done doing the dishes and putting your kids to bed and all the rest of that, then maybe you can be creative. But we have to change our perception of creativity, because creativity is something that we're doing constantly. It's something that's with us all the time. There was a friend of mine a long time ago who was a poet who used to talk about the creativity of single moms making dinner out of nothing. That is creativity. Anything that has to do with even problem solving is creative. And that's a muscle. It's a muscle you build over time, in the same way that faith is a muscle you build over time. And if you don't use those muscles, they atrophy. That's just the nature. It's just the nature of muscles. They atrophy without use. Creativity allows you to relinquish a sense of control, to experience something altogether new. And when you're experiencing something altogether new, you cannot predetermine how it comes to be. That gives you the opportunity to approach your life in a different way. If you can approach your life with a sense of creativity, then you have a sense of something new is always coming. Bad things happen. They just do. I won't lie to you. I don't know why. I don't know how to stop them. I don't think you can. We can assume that pain is going to be part of our lives. Pain from frustration, or from grief, or from loss, or from expectations unmet, from all kinds of things. But pain doesn't always have to be bad. You can approach pain with the same creativity you approach music, with the same creativity that you approach macaroni art projects. I don't know what it is you do in your free time, but whatever it is you do in your free time, you can approach these things with the exact same creativity. And if you can relinquish a sense of control, you can experience something inside of those that you've never imagined was possible. And all you have to do, the only thing you have to do, is accept that you're not in control. It's harder than it seems. Oftentimes in my life, and certainly in my spiritual journey, I've been really jealous of traditions that have long-standing traditions within their religious practice, that have specific prayers, specific rituals, right? Catholic, Muslim, Orthodox Jews, the list goes on, right? There's rituals that are built in. And so there's a touchstone. You know that there's a prayer for this, there's a prayer for that. You know, if I'm feeling this, I can do this prayer, I can sing this song, whatever. I, for whatever reason in my life, have not been able to experience those with the same amount of faith that somebody else has. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's that I just think too much. I don't know what my problem is, but I haven't. I haven't been able to give myself over to a tradition without rationalizing why I've done such a thing. And so I found myself here. And let me tell you the hardest part about a tradition like this is that it really relies on self-awareness. That's the good thing, and that's the bad thing. Because you can go as deep as you want, and you could stop where you want to. We're in a time, we live in a world that needs self-awareness. Now more than ever, the world requires that people check their baggage, that people be mindful of their assumptions, their judgments, their frustrations, their pains, their wrongs, and their wrongdoings. And it requires that we do so without judging ourselves in the process. And it is that sense of self-awareness that's going to allow us to change our perception. Our spiritual practice is like a living affirmative prayer. The idea is to change the way you perceive yourself. Your history does not have to determine who you are. Who you have been does not have to determine who you are. But it can certainly inform who you will be. If you can take that which you have been, if you can shift your perception to understand yourself as somebody who is loved and creative, necessary, if you can shift your perception to understand that each and everything that's ever happened to you has not been a result of some failing on your part, has not been a result of some malicious piece of you, has not been a result of you just flat out being a bad person. If you can step back and you can re-perceive who you have been, then you can show up clean, clear, and available here and now, and the world needs that more than ever. And I implore you not to be afraid. Do not be afraid. You can go deeper. You can go deeper. We here at Inner Light like to say that we are all one. And that is true. But if you stop there, we're going to create more problems than we can solve. Because it's not just that we're all one. It's that we are all different and one. And that part is really, really important. Our differences are not a weakness, they are a strength. And to gloss over that would be a mistake. People are different. We come from all different cultures, all different backgrounds, all different sets of experiences, and no two people are created the same. And like I like to say, some people need to be knocked down a notch and some people need to come up a notch. And only you can determine which you are. That's where the self-awareness comes into play. But people are different. And we have to recognize those differences. We have to honor them in one another. And we have to be able to see each other clearly. The way that we eliminate a sense of judgment is to accept that they exist. Let life be your creative project. Approach it with the same open-mindedness that you would approach anything. And please, please, let us go deeper. Amen?